Hello and welcome to another episode of All Politics is Local. We have a great show planned for you again tonight. With me in the studio is State Auditor Suzanne Bump. All Politics is Local is a production of the Greater Blackstone Valley Democrats. For more information about the Greater Blackstone Valley Dems, please feel free to visit our website at www.gbvdems.org. So, Auditor Bump, thank you so much for making All Politics is Local a stop on the campaign trail.
I'm delighted to be here.
How are you tonight?
Terrific.
So I'm sure that many of my viewers are wondering, what exactly does the State Auditor's Office do, and what are your responsibilities? What's it all about?
Well, first of all, I'm one of 6 constitutional offices, so I'm part of the executive branch. I, like the governor and secretary of state, attorney general, treasurer, I run every 4 years for the position. I'm a constitutional officer because my power derives right from the Constitution. I'm written right into the Constitution. And so the auditor's job is to follow the money, simply put, to see how state agencies are spending the money, making sure that they're following the rules when they spend it, and we're getting what we pay for. My goal, though, is to expand that a little bit, because I think that we can give more value to taxpayers if we also ask how effective, how efficient is the provision of this service, and can we do it better?
Oh, that's terrific. So
well, it's an accountability function. That's what that's the role of the auditor.
So many people talk about governments being inefficient, and there's so much waste, fraud, and abuse. Is there a Department of Waste, Fraud, and Abuse that we could just unfund? How would we go about doing that? What do you think?
That would be a horrible thing, because then there really wouldn't be any need for the auditor's office if we just all segregated it into one little pot. But the reality is that, as I said, the state auditors now, not just in Massachusetts, but across the country, are moving away from just doing financial audits. We can contract out to private firms, auditing firms, to just do our financial statements. The real value is identifying how state government is spending the money, where the inefficiencies are, where the gaps are, where is an agency failing to do its job well and therefore wasting money. And it can be in big areas, but mostly it's made up of small areas where things just fall through the cracks, where there's not good training or there's not good technology so an agency can do its job. Okay. Sometimes they just haven't done, it's very basic stuff. Business people will be familiar with the idea that you have to set up what's called an internal control plan. So you plan for your future, but you make sure that you plan for all of the things that could go wrong, and you take steps to prevent that. Some agencies have not done a very good job of that, and that's where the waste comes in.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more about what are your responsibilities within the State Auditor's Office? Can you tell us a little bit about a typical audit or something?
Sure.
Along those lines?
So actually, although I'm called the Auditor's Office, there are a couple of different things that we do. So we do audits. We are required under law to do them according to government standards. Those are standards that are set by the federal government, Federal Office of Government Accountability. Mm-hmm. So they set the standards for how states do their auditing, whether it's financial or it's performance-based, which is what we do. We are supposed to do an audit of every department about every 3 years. And those departments are the judiciary and all of the executive branch, which includes entities like the Convention Center and the MBTA and local housing authorities and redevelopment authorities. So anything that has an authority in it that's been authorized by the legislature, we audit those. And then we also can follow the money that's being spent by state agencies, and if they have contracts with service providers, which is really the way most of our human services, whether it's elder care or adolescent, troubled teen programs, most of that's spent not directly by state agencies, but the services are provided by private entities. We can see how they're spending the money to make sure that they are doing it right. So that's most of what we do is audit work. But we also have two other divisions. One is the Bureau of Special Investigations, and that we have a team of people there that concentrates specifically on identifying public assistance fraud. So whether it's the state's Medicaid program, the Mass Health program, or it might be the Department of Transitional Assistance or daycare, all of which get subsidized by the government. Unfortunately, there are some people who want to cheat the system. They want to get benefits to which they're not entitled. We work with the agencies, and we also work on tips from the public, investigate public assistance fraud on an individual basis. And then the last thing that we do is have a division of local mandates. Back when, you might remember, and some of your viewers might remember, back when Proposition 2.5 was enacted into law by the voters. In 1980, this division of local mandates came up within the auditor's office. That was a provision of one of the laws. And we make determinations on behalf of cities and towns as to whether a new requirement that gets imposed by state government on a municipality is something that, under the law, state government should pay for. So there are legal criteria for deciding whether something is an unfunded mandate for which the state should be paying rather than local taxpayers. And then we do the financial analysis so that the legislature will know how much money they have to put into that program.
They have to provide if that's the case, if it's the case that they should provide it. Yeah.
So those are the three main functions within the office.
Wow,
so there's a lot to keep us occupied.
Exactly, yeah, and not only that, with the size of our budget, what's the budget this year? $32 billion or
No, it's more than that. It's more in the order of $36 billion.
$36 billion.
Yeah.
Okay, so I haven't been paying attention then.
No, so it's grown a little bit. So the budget's $36 billion. That doesn't include capital spending, so road construction, school construction, and the like. It also doesn't include all of those housing authorities that I mentioned. They're not part of the state's operating budget.
Okay.
But so my only point is, all of those billions of dollars worth of responsibilities we have to fulfill with a budget of approximately $17 million.
Wow. Wow.
So
you have your work cut out for you.
Yes.
Huh?
So that's a reality that every state agency has to struggle with. How do you meet your mandate with the resources that the legislature provides? One of the things that we've done then is to focus on agencies or aspects of agencies that are at greatest risk of going astray. Where is money most likely to be wasted, taken up by fraud, stolen, and where are services at greatest risk of failing to deliver, failing to meet public expectations. So in our audit work, we have, and we're getting ever more sophisticated about how we do this risk analysis for agencies, bringing in new technologies to help us look at things like credit card transactions and expenses in certain categories and the like, so that we have to keep sharpening our skills so that we can make the best use of the resources we get too.
Sure. You must have a significant staff. How many people do you approximately do you employ in your office?
There are about 230 people in the office. That's actually fewer than when I came into office. In 2011, when I started, there were approximately 300 people there. Some of them were part-timers, and frankly, we really couldn't afford them and keep the pay competitive that we need to in order to attract some quality people. We also had some money coming. Do you remember the federal stimulus program?
Right, ARRA.
So there was a piece of that money went to oversight provided by the state government. The auditor's office got a piece of that. We audited those ARRA programs, and by the way, They were very well run. All of that stimulus money, there was very little waste, very few failures to follow the rules in spending.
Excellent.
That was money well spent.
Good, good. I'm glad for that.
Yeah.
So, a new tradition on All Politics is Local, it seems, is for my guests to bring me some campaign swag. So, Brett, if you could pull up the picture of my truck's infamous tailgate, we'd like to get a look at that. There's my picture of my tailgate, and you can see that it's quite the involved tailgate out there. So,
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, there's quite a few bumper stickers on there. I kind of wear my politics on my sleeve, and I think I'm a little infamous in town. So, Brett, if you could come back to me, I wanted to show off what Suzanne brought here on camera 3. Take a look, my Suzanne Bump bumper sticker, which I'm very proud of. Suzanne, we discussed this earlier. Where would you like this to go on my truck? What do you think?
I think that there's a little space for it on the bottom right corner.
The bottom right corner. Brett, could we see the truck again? Just to take a quick bottom right.
Yeah,
there
bottom
is.
right, bottom right corner.
Okay.
You know, I think
Yeah.
that's a good space.
It'll
for
balance out my Darwin fish.
There you go.
Which, yeah, I can see it right there. That's going to look great. So next time on All Politics is Local, when we're showing my tailgate, there will be an addition to it. So thank you very much for the bumper sticker. I really appreciate it. I actually got a T-shirt last time from Joe Hall, who's running for the state rep seat in the Worcester 8th, which that was wonderful
Oh
too.
wow!
So.
Well, we had them 4 years ago. We had some T-shirts for some of our workers at the convention. I should have brought you a button. I also have buttons.
Oh, buttons are great. Yeah, I love buttons.
Yeah, it's a pretty nifty button. Looks a lot like the bumper sticker, as you might imagine.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll mail you a DVD copy of the show, and perhaps you'll mail me back a button.
I can do that.
We can do it that way.
I can do that.
So while we're on the topic of bumper stickers and campaigning, how can my viewers become involved in your campaign? What can they do to find you on the web, on Twitter, and Facebook, and stuff like that?
Well, we, as you would expect, have a website. It is SuzanneBump.com. So very, very simple. You can follow us, follow me on Facebook. I have a political one rather than a personal Facebook. Mm-hmm. I tweet as well. The Twitter account is Bump4, the number 4, Auditor.
Okay.
So you can follow me. You can follow me there. And obviously, if folks are interested in the audit work, they can also go to the website for the state, which is mass.gov/auditor.
Okay. I love how mass.gov does that with all of the various departments. You know, mass.gov/DOR, mass.gov/DOER,
They make it simple.
They do. They really make it simple.
And you know what? Actually, I also found out just today. I had attended recently a state auditors conference in St. Paul, and we were talking about technology that we're using in the offices. And until then, I hadn't appreciated that in Massachusetts, our state government websites are also mobile friendly.
Oh, really?
So
Okay.
they will adjust to whatever size screen you have on your mobile, your personal device.
Your handheld device. Yeah.
Yes, as opposed to the old big screen and you just get a piece of it on your
right, and you have to scroll through it. What am I looking at here?
So
it adjusts.
Massachusetts is mobile friendly.
Great. That's nice work. We see things all the time, like the Health Connector website. Everybody's complaining that it doesn't work correctly. Would that be something that you might get involved in your office?
Yeah, it's quite possible that we will look at that. Lots of times when there's a major system failure like this, there's some sorting out as to whether I'll get involved, whether the governor might create a special commission or group of people to do it, whether the Attorney General might have a role, whether it should be the Inspector General that will look into something, and so we kind of sort those things out. For instance, in the Department of Children and Families, back in December when the department realized that Jeremiah Oliver, a boy whose family was a client of that agency, had gone missing. There were lots of cries about there needs to be somebody to look into this, and I think that the governor did the right thing, bringing in the Child Welfare League of America But as it happened, we were auditing another part of that agency's activities, the foster care program.
Yep.
So we were already there. We needed to finish that. It wouldn't have made sense for us to then switch over before we'd completed an audit of the foster care program,
Right.
where we found deficiencies in how they were operating just the same way that that the system that was taking care of the Jeremiah's family had failed.
Right. And naturally, I remember that case, and one of the things that I remember most about it was the eloquent words spoken by a judge afterwards, in which he said, "We as a society need to decide what our priorities are." Right. Consistently underfunding that department for years on the budget results in tragedies like this, and we have to watch out for that. It's so many people look at taxes as some kind of a horrible burden, and it's terrible that we have to be taxed. I look at taxes as a bargain. The amount of money that I pay in taxes, or that a typical middle class family pays in taxes, you're getting so many services for that money.
That's right. And if you aren't, then a family member is, or a neighbor is. But the judge is absolutely right. One of the things that I talk about when I'm speaking to groups, and actually particularly to business groups, this resonates with them, is that if we want government to function well, then we have to invest in accountability. A lot of politicians throw around the idea of accountability. To me, accountability in government is not just being willing to admit you made a mistake and apologize for it. Accountability has to be a front-end function in government. You have to plan for it. You have to figure out as I was saying before, what are the risks that something is going to go wrong in this agency? Plan for it. You have to have competent people. You have to keep them trained in the latest techniques and keep their skills fresh. You've got to use the current technology. You've got to invest in sufficient oversight. So accountability doesn't happen on its own. You've got to plan for it. You've got to pay for it, and that's what was failing all those children and families at the Department of Children and Families, was that the agency had not had those resources provided, and that unfortunately is a pretty predictable result.
Right, and so it'll be interesting to see. I hope that things can turn around there. I know that the head of the agency finally resigned a couple of months ago, correct? So she's been replaced now by Governor Patrick, and here's hoping that we can turn that around and make a difference for those families who need the service.
No, that's exactly right. And the legislature clearly has a role to play there. They are the ones that decide what the budget is going to be. But I'll tell you something else, that so does the public have a role to play, because we well know that there are lots of demands for government services, and it's tough to fund these programs, all of them, whether it's road repair or it's caring for kids suffering from abuse or neglect, especially when it's difficult to pay for it when times are bad.
Right.
And we had that agency was cut not because people were indifferent, but we
because
went through a recession.
Exactly, we fell on hard times as a nation and as a commonwealth. Yeah.
Exactly. The impulse, though, when times are better, as they are now, is to then start adding new services rather than going back and saying, how do we rebuild the strength of these agencies?
Right. And where can we help to augment something that perhaps was cut in the past that needs to be returned to
yeah, that's right.
solvency.
And the public needs to understand that. They need to understand that sometimes the no is exactly the right answer to a call for a new service, because you've got to focus on improving the quality of what you have there now before you start adding new layers of services. And I know that's hard for some people to hear a Democrat say, but I want people to believe in government, and when things don't work, it's hard for them to believe in government.
Absolutely. That's my point about government has always been that government can and should be a force for good in people's lives. So many people say the government can't do anything right, the government can't do anything right, and then they want to be elected to that government. It ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy. They get there, they don't do a good job. And you know, the government can and should do things that are right. Look at what we did in this country with the Greatest Generation. They won World War II, and then they went to the moon. You know.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, and then I was just speaking a few moments ago about the federal stimulus money, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and it wasn't just our experience in Massachusetts that money was well spent, that it was spent timely, so it got out the door quickly. Everybody followed the rules. We got quality work. That was the case all across this country. And one of the reasons that was successful is that built into that was oversight money.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just program money. It
Right.
wasn't just here's a pot of money for road reconstruction, or here's a pot of money so that you can keep teachers in the classrooms. It's here's the money for those important services, and then here's a layer of money so that you can ensure that it's going to be used properly. And it worked.
That is tremendous. That really is. It's a great success story. One of the things that upset me about the ARRA was the number of tax cuts that were involved in there. Tax cuts are really only marginally stimulative to an economy.
Right.
Not that Moody's is any kind of a liberal bastion or anything, but Moody's came out with a report a while ago that showed the economically stimulative effects of various government programs.
Right.
Tax cuts, for every dollar spent on tax cuts, Moody's reported $1.02 in increased economic activity. So really, only marginally stimulative. What they found was the greatest things that government can do, infrastructure spending. For every dollar spent on infrastructure, $1.59 of increased economic activity was returned. Tremendous return on investment there for infrastructure spending. But what was really shocking about this, being Moody's, the really shocking revelation was the most economically stimulative thing government can do is food stamps. For every dollar on food stamps, $1.72 of increased economic activity was returned. And it really does make sense, because if someone is so poor or so close to the poverty line that they actually qualify for food stamps, when they get food stamps, they're able to buy food with them. The rest of their income can now go to paying bills, to doing other things that are economically stimulative.
Right.
That's how economics works.
Well, and the other side of that equation, just like unemployment benefits, is that then the businesses benefit because those bills are being paid, those purchases are being made.
Yep.
That's the benefit of that's why the unemployment insurance system was created back during the Great Depression. It was so that we'd have families, stay together and have some means of support, but also so that businesses wouldn't go out of business.
Right. And waiting for people to pay for various services that they provide. Yeah.
Yeah.
My brother has been listening to way too much talk radio, and he's of the opinion that the death tax needs to be eliminated, the inheritance tax. He says, if I die and leave money to you, John, you shouldn't have to pay tax on that because I was already taxed on that money. That's his point, and that's why he thinks that the death tax should be repealed. I make the argument back to him, though, George, when I get paid on Fridays and I take my paycheck, I've already paid taxes on that money. But I stop at the grocery store and I buy groceries, or I go home and I pay my car insurance or my electric bill. I go and I pay bills, or I do whatever I need to do with that money that I just earned. That money that I just spent becomes income to those people. So even though I've already paid taxes on it, it now has become income to somebody else. And guess what? They pay taxes on that. So if you die and leave me $50,000, A, I'll say thank you, and B, I'll pay my taxes on that income gladly, even though you've already been taxed on it. He still doesn't understand.
Well, and I'd just like to make sure that your audience knows that if it's $50,000, there is no tax. The inheritance tax is not kicking
until
until
$2 million.
If he's worried about that, then he's been doing pretty well for himself.
I would hope that he can leave me $2 million.
But speaking of taxes, that one of the things that I would like to know is just how well our tax system is being administered. And I said that I can audit any state agency. And with regard to the Department of Revenue, Yes, I can audit that state agency to make sure that they're keeping timesheets on their employees and they're making purchases of goods and services in compliance with rules and the like. But what I can't tell, what I can't go in and find out is how well they are actually doing their main function, which is auditing tax returns.
Okay.
Because I am prohibited from looking at tax returns. And I would have to look at tax returns in order to find out if the Department of Revenue is properly looking at tax returns. So I'm in this quandary of trying to figure out how effective is our tax program and how effectively does the Department of Revenue administer our tax program, and are all of these business tax breaks that you were speaking of a while ago, are they actually delivering on the promises that they make?
Yep.
Lots of tax breaks go to companies that are supposed to be creating jobs or investing in green technologies, for instance, and we have no way of independently verifying whether that's actually happening, because the state auditor's office can't get access to that material.
Wow.
So I'm trying to convince the legislature that I should do it. Nearly every other state auditor's office has it explicitly in their laws that they have access to business tax returns for the purpose of determining the effectiveness of programs. Other state auditors' offices have regularly do these kinds of audits, but I have yet to be able to convince the legislature and the business groups that lobby on Beacon Hill that this should be done. And yet whenever I speak to a small business person, they say, of course you should be able to do that, because how many of them are actually getting the benefit of these job creation tax breaks
Right.
and the like? So it's a relatively small number of businesses that are getting these benefits. It means that everybody else is paying higher taxes.
Yep.
Because of the
benefits that are being afforded to them.
Yeah, because of the revenue that we don't collect.
Absolutely.
So
when you talk about green energy programs, it's
Sure.
very near and dear to my heart. As many of my viewers know, I'm employed by the solar power industry, and really the leadership shown here in Massachusetts for renewable energy is just tremendous. I've talked with various people from around the country. I blog a lot on some of the big national blogs.
Oh, okay.
And so I've talked with people about the programs that we have here in Massachusetts, and they're all jealous because we really do have, we are really spurring this industry forward, and they're doing a great job. So I would hope that you could take a look at the books once in a while and make sure that what we're doing is right and that it's being done properly.
Right.
But it sure does seem like our program is a very great success. Just yesterday I was blogging on Daily Coast, and somebody was talking about there's a homeowner in North Carolina who put solar shingles on his house, and they were talking about how great it was that he was able to do the solar shingles. And so I took a look at North Carolina's net metering rules and stuff like that. It's awful. I'm so proud of Massachusetts, the way we've done it here. We really reward people who invest in solar power. In North Carolina, it's terrible. We have, here in Massachusetts, we have renewable energy certificates.
Right.
If you generate your own electricity, you get rewarded by these solar renewable energy certificates, which you can then sell on an auction market and reap that reward back. You can get some of your investment back. It leads to good return on investment for people who do. In North Carolina, the utility keeps them.
Really?
No compensation to the system owner at all. The utility just keeps the RECs, and that's just unfair to my mind.
Well, it sounds like the fossil fuel lobby has.
It could very well be.
Has quite a degree of influence down in that.
Of
in
the
that
three big
legislation.
energy providers in North Carolina, one of them is Duke Energy.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was thinking
yes,
of.
I think that they've gotten to them as far as that's concerned.
But see, that's the benefit that an independent, objective auditor can bring to public policy making. It can not only help an agency do a better job of spending taxpayer money and delivering services, but when you do that kind of analysis, it helps the legislature, it helps the governor make decisions on those issues going forward. And we spend a fair amount of time talking with the legislature, helping them understand our audit findings and how they can change laws in order to increase accountability, make sure that people are being better served. So we work with agencies to fix things, but then we also work with the legislature when they really need to change the laws so that we can improve efficiency and effectiveness.
Sounds like a really, really interesting job. I think I'll run for auditor someday.
Someday would be a good time.
Someday.
Yeah, someday.
Tell me about the qualifications for the job. What are your qualifications for the job?
Well, let's see. In the law itself, there aren't any. But what I bring to the job is a background as an attorney. So someone who is schooled in the idea of compliance, following the rules. I also bring public policy experience because years ago, back when I was much younger, I was a state representative. I represented the town of Braintree for 8 years in the House. That was from '85 till '93. And then just before I became state auditor, I was a member of Governor Patrick's administration. I was the Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development.
Okay.
So I had taken public policy. I had been responsible for then implementing public policy because I ran the Division of Unemployment Insurance, Industrial Accidents, Occupational Safety, labor relations. So I understood how you turn law into public policy. Mm-hmm. I spent a good deal of time putting in performance measures for how well my agencies were doing at reducing backlogs, getting decisions made quickly, making good use of training monies so that we could educate a workforce, increase skills, particularly for folks whose industries had become obsolete. So that, and it was doing that work that really gave me the insight into what the state auditor's office could do if it had greater use of technology, which we now do, and if we brought in other skills to supplement the auditors who had been focused more solely on financial matters.
Okay. So tell me what you're doing differently in the state auditor's job compared to, say, the prior auditor.
So now we have higher entry standards for all of our jobs. You have to have a higher degree of education. We're looking for credentials in different areas of fraud examiners, for instance, and CPAs or certified government financial managers. We're looking for higher level master's degrees in public administration, for instance. So we have a more skilled workforce to begin with, and then we're investing a lot of time and money into keeping skills current. We've invested money into technology so that we are able to handle information from more of the state's systems than we could before. We've actually progressed to a point where last year at a state auditors conference, I brought some staff members out to show them how far we have come. So we are literally setting standards for the use of technology across the country, which is pretty cool.
That's terrific. Massachusetts leads yet again. I love Massachusetts.
Yeah. But here's the most important thing that we've done actually is when I came in, I said that we needed to do a peer review of the office. Auditing shops in the private sector or the public sector should be peer reviewed, that is essentially audited by a group of their peers every 3 years. Well, the Massachusetts Auditor's Office had not been. It had not been audited in 15 years. Okay. And so while they were still doing good work, I brought in a peer review team and they said, well, you may be doing good work, but you're not meeting government standards.
So there's room for improvement.
There was a lot of room for improvement. You can pass a peer review, you can fail a peer review, you can end up someplace in the middle. In 2011, when I had a peer review done of the work being done previously, we failed.
Oh, wow.
We failed. So I vowed that we were going to achieve excellence in auditing. We were going to pass our next peer review. So in March, the peer review team came in from around the country to look at our staff qualifications, how well we were doing audit planning and documenting and writing our reports. And as I said, we could have failed, passed with qualifications, or pass, and we passed. We got the highest possible rating.
Terrific.
So yeah, I feel really good about that. So does the staff. I mean, it was demoralizing when they found out that they had failed a peer review.
Yeah.
But we did a very fast turnaround.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
That's
so
terrific.
I'm very proud of them.
And employee morale must have shot through the roof
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
That's always a good thing.
Yep.
So, tell me about the impact of audits. What happens with a typical audit? What happens afterwards?
Well, so the typical audit does indeed have what we call findings. We frequently, almost always, find some way that an agency could improve its operations. Maybe they haven't planned for, as I said, all of the risks. So when we were auditing the Department of Children and Families, we found that the social workers were not having kids get their medical exams within 7 days of being placed with a foster family. We found that they weren't doing the further checkups either. They couldn't document all of the background checks that were being performed. So we will find deficiencies like those and make recommendations back to the agency for what the standard is that they should be meeting, and then what they need to do in order to meet that standard. Now, normally you wouldn't find out whether an agency was paying any heed to what you said until you went back in the cycle and audited them again. But that's years later, and I wanted to know sooner. I wanted to get some insight sooner, so we instituted a process now 6 months after an audit with findings. We go back and we ask the agency essentially, how helpful was this recommendation?
Essentially a follow-up.
Do you agree? Did you agree with it? Have you implemented it already? And if you're in the process of implementing it, how far along are you? When do you expect to complete it? Or then are you just going to ignore what we have to say? I suppose that's another option. Nobody ever says that they're going to ignore what we have to say. And actually, we are finding, so we started doing that just over the past 3 years, and we are finding something like 90% of our audit recommendations have been implemented or are being implemented within 6 months.
Okay. Now, do you have any enforcement teeth? How do you?
We don't.
Okay.
We cannot force an agency to implement the recommendations that we make. That's why, though, we make sure that it's not just the agency that knows. If it's a housing authority, we make sure the board of directors knows what the results of an audit are. If it's an agency, we make sure that their secretariat and the governor's office knows. We also make sure that the legislature knows, the appropriate committee. So it's a housing authority, then we make sure that the housing committee knows of it. It also helps them detect, all of us detect patterns. So if something is going wrong in housing authority after housing authority, then the legislature can act to correct that.
Step in and do something about it.
And they've been a really good partner for us. We had audited a number of special education collaboratives. Now, I don't know if, I'm sure that somewhere down in your geographic area you have at least one special ed collaborative, so that the communities, school districts come together and they jointly purchase services. They create programs for special needs students that can't be served in the classroom. And there are two benefits to that. One is that it's more cost effective and the kids get access to better programs. So we were auditing those programs and kept finding similar findings, identifying similar problems across a number of these. We finally took a step back and said, the Department of Education doesn't have anywhere near the ability that they should have to set standards for how these operate.
Collaboratives should operate. Yeah.
School departments, school committees aren't getting enough information back about how money is being spent. And we made a series of recommendations to the legislature, and within 6 months, or maybe 8 months, they were enacted into law so that we can be sure that taxpayers and special needs students are being well served.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Yeah. So so that's where where you have to take a lot of action. The legislature needs to step in, but for the most part, agencies are able to rearrange some priorities sometimes and put an emphasis on, for instance, fraud fighting. So when we did the Department of Transitional Assistance, we found that they weren't screening all of their applicants to make sure that the Social Security numbers that they were using were truly theirs. We found that a lot of applications had been using Social Security numbers of people who were, according to the Social Security Administration, dead.
Okay.
So that's an indication of fraud.
Yeah, it certainly would be. Yeah,
and so
a simple cross-check like that.
That's exactly right. Which they were required under their rules to do, but they weren't always
actually following
doing
through
it.
and doing
Sometimes they would, and sometimes they wouldn't. They also weren't making use of all of the reports that their systems would spit out at the end of a month to show them where benefits were being withdrawn that could show them possible fraud in the use of welfare benefits.
Okay.
So those are the kinds of things that we do that I think really add value to the taxpayer, that go beyond just did the numbers add up. It's what are we getting? How effectively are agencies delivering their services? How efficiently are they doing it? Are the taxpayers being well served?
Okay. What's your opinion of the photo ID on EBT cards? I know that that's been a big topic up on Beacon Hill.
Yeah, well, quite apart from my opinion, there is actual evidence to bear out that it is not cost effective. Just to simply put a photo on a card that rarely, if ever, gets shown to a clerk in a supermarket or another store, it's not a cost-effective way to fight fraud in that program. There are lots of other things that we can do. Looking at patterns of spending of those benefits, for instance, that will yield a much greater benefit. So I know that it has a certain degree of political appeal for some folks, but it's not the most cost-effective of solutions.
Okay. So let's see, we were going to talk about local, all politics being local. Have you done any audits here in Worcester County that we should be aware of?
Housing authorities, as I mentioned, we have done a number of them here. We audit as I think I mentioned that we also audit the judicial system.
Yes.
So we had done, for instance, an audit of the Worcester County probate court. Found that there were some issues there that, in a failure to keep tabs on employees coming and going, and one employee took advantage of that and was teaching classes when he ought to have been devoting full time to his duties there, so we found that set of issues. But we also found that the clerk there, the registrar rather, had implemented a number of recommendations from a previous audit some years ago, and he took quick action to resolve the problems that we found there. When we just did this more recent audit, which was 2011, and and that's pretty typical, that there be findings in an audit. Something is very likely to go wrong at some point in any operation, and the measure for us of accountability is, what do you do when there is such a problem?
Sure, when something's brought to your attention.
Fix it?
Right.
How quickly do you fix it? Another audit that we did was concerned the UMass system. We found that at the UMass Medical School, that the chancellor at the medical school got bonuses of several $100,000 when there was no provision in its contract for the payment of bonuses or performance criteria that he would have to meet. This had happened under a previous president of the UMass system. and then there were people under him as well who were getting bonuses when, according to their performance rating system, they weren't entitled to them. So those are a couple of things of local interest.
So we want to put a stop to those types of
We certainly do,
things,
and so that's the important thing. How are we going to fix this problem? And so the president's office is making sure that that doesn't happen again, and that there's more integrity in the system and accountability for the decisions that get made.
Tell us a little bit more about community requests. What kind of community requests have you seen for unfunded mandates from the state, and what have you done for those?
We have seen a number of requests come in. A couple of them have been around education expenditures, which is a pretty substantial portion of any community's budget. There were, in a couple of communities, there was increased school department spending caused by family homelessness, which, yeah, I see the puzzled look on your face. Exactly. What had happened was that families who were becoming homeless had no housing options available in their home community, and they worked with the state, and they got placed temporarily in motels. When you are in that situation, you as a parent have the option of enrolling your children in the school system of the temporary residence, or you can have the children attend school in their original home district, and that's obviously of great value in terms of stability and continuity.
It's certainly
and
preferable
all of that.
to keep them with continuity. Yeah.
Exactly, but the requirement was then that both of the school districts would share in the cost of transporting the children.
Okay.
And if you're talking about transporting someone from Bellingham to Mendon, that might not be a lot of money, but for some of these communities which had a large population of homeless children, they were having to travel great distances.
Sure.
It was adding up to a lot of money.
Bellingham to Southbridge would certainly be.
Exactly,
yeah.
and there were, in fact, so we looked at that and determined that that this did meet a legal definition of an unfunded mandate. The state was requiring communities to implement a very well-intentioned and appropriate policy, but doing so at great cost to the community, which of course is taking money away from actual classroom instruction.
Yep.
So we have a legal analysis that we have to do. We did that legal analysis and said, yeah, this is something that the state should be paying for. Then we surveyed all of the communities in the state. We found that for 33 communities, they're spending over $100,000 a year just on transportation.
Wow.
There were several communities that were spending more than $500,000 a year.
Wow.
So, so we brought that to the legislature, and the legislature agreed that it's something that they should be funding. They're not funding it at 100%, but they're making a substantial contribution that has provided a lot of fiscal relief to the communities that are involved. So that's one example of the work that we do in unfunded mandates.
Well, I'll tell you, really sounds like a fascinating job. I had no idea myself that the auditor's office would be so involved, so deeply involved in public policy. Public policy is kind of a hobby of mine. I like to look at public policy and try to think of the implications of, there's so much about it that's so counterintuitive.
Right.
There's things that just seem backwards, but when you really dig down and think about it, it becomes obvious that this would be the result.
Well, and I think that that's something that is different that I've brought to this position, just because of the variety of experiences that I've had in government, and just my bent for getting things right as well. You combine all of that, and we are going deeper in having a deeper public policy impact than we had before. It helps that we have more credible audits than we did before, so that's another reason for people to sit up and take notice of what we're doing now that we're auditing to government standards.
And increasing the requirements for people within your department. If
Right.
you're going to have a job here, you need to have an advanced degree, et cetera.
Right.
That really is tremendous. You've done a wonderful job as far as I can tell from my seat here. So.
Well, thanks. I'm really enjoying it. I'm looking forward to this campaign year. You know that I don't have a Democratic opponent. I will face one or two, possibly two candidates in the general election in November. But as I said, I came into the office with a plan, and I had a vision, and now I have a record of accomplishment.
There you
so
go.
I'm
there
ready.
you go. You've got the 3 keys to re-election. So
there we go.
We'll look forward to working with you and seeing you on the campaign trail. Tell us again how our viewers can find out more about your campaign, perhaps volunteer, donate, things of that nature.
Sure. My website is SuzanneBump.com. You can go there, and as you said, you find out about the campaign, find out about our work. You can follow me on Facebook, and you can also follow me on Twitter, Bump4Auditor.
That's tremendous. We have about 5 minutes left. Let's talk a little bit more about what you're doing differently in the department. I think government auditing standards was one that we really didn't touch on. We talked on your personnel standards, and we talked about technology. What about government auditing standards? I heard you mention that just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, well, so when you are conducting an audit and you want to meet government standards, you have to do your planning in a certain way. You have to lay out all of your audit objectives. They have to be clearly stated in the audit. You have to plan your audit so that you will be able to collect the evidence that is necessary to meet the objectives. You have to do a thorough risk assessment. You have to assess the reliability of the data that you're going to rely upon. There are certain ways that you have to document your work, and there are certain reporting requirements. So all of these go into the standards. It requires, and every auditor has to meet standards, but everybody does it in a slightly different way because everybody's audit mandate, the laws under which they operate, vary. The investment in technologies vary from one state to another. Some states don't really make much use of electronic records in their audits. They're still doing a lot of work on
paper,
on paper, which is not as efficient.
I would call it quaint.
So anyway, so you really have to create audit manuals to guide the auditors through the process. You have to train them thoroughly so that they understand how to ask the questions, how to prepare the exhibits. So the idea is that any auditor, any other auditor, and so when a peer review team comes in, any member of the peer review team, looking at all of the evidence that you as an auditor have put together would come to the exact same conclusions that you do. So that's how, so it's not just a matter of wanting everybody to do things in the same way. All of the standards go towards ensuring that that audits are conducted with independence from the entity and other outside influences, with objectivity, that you're not imposing your own subjective criteria into the audit, that they are complete, that you've touched all bases, that you have just otherwise conducted yourself in a professional way. So that's what the standards are all about, and that's why it's so important that we meet those standards so that the public can have confidence in what we are doing, and that helps build public trust.
And public trust is vitally important to good government.
It's the name of the game.
It really is. You know, I look, like I said, I look at government as it can and should be a force for good in people's lives. So much good has been accomplished. You look at the Affordable Care Act and the nationwide, what's going on. Here in Massachusetts, we're approaching 0% uninsured.
Right.
It's tremendous.
Yeah.
But not only Massachusetts, Minnesota has 95% of their population covered. It really is great. And you look at, you look at resistance to things like this. One of my bumper stickers says healthcare, not warfare.
Right.
Why should we be going and blowing things up?
Right, when we can be investing in the health of our
citizenry
of our people.
and our people.
Yeah, or if you want to look at it in other terms, of our workforce. You can't grow an economy with a bunch of people who are out sick.
Right, right.
Or unable to do the job.
Even things like paid sick leave. We do need paid sick leave. I'd like to know when I go and get lunch that my server wasn't sneezing and coughing this morning before she came to work.
Right.
I need to be relatively assured that I'm not going to get sick because she is, or because he is, for that matter. It just it kind of flies in the face of logic when you look at things like that that people will be forced to come to work even though they're sick. All of that kind of stuff. You mentioned before that you worked in a number of state agencies, things like the Department of Industrial Accidents, Workforce Development. Some people would call all those job-killing regulations.
Well, I think that they provide an important set of protections
a vital service
for people.
Absolutely,
As well as then the workforce training, and that was really most of the money that my agencies spent. As Secretary of Labor, I oversaw 6 agencies and 1,500 employees. Most of the money that we spent was on workforce training, and the emphasis was on, what are we getting for this? Are people just going through classes at a career center, or and we just totaling up the number of people who sit through a class, or are we totaling up the number of people who actually find jobs?
Right.
So it's that performance outcomes emphasis that I put on it.
And that's where I go with taxes. What are we getting when we pay our taxes? I look at perhaps a young couple makes $40,000 or $45,000 a year. They have a couple of kids. They rent an apartment. What are they paying in taxes? If they're paying 25% of their income in taxes, it's $10,000, $11,000. What are they getting for that $10,000 or $11,000? To my mind, snow removal alone is worth every penny. Within hours after every winter storm, no matter how many winter storms there are, within hours, the roads are cleared. You can go out and do what you need to do, assuming you can clear your own driveway.
Well, and then it's cost of education.
Yeah, I suppose,
Eliminate public education, and where are we?
And then try to hire a carpenter who can add. So it just kind of flies in the face of logic. Some things on the other side of the aisle makes me upset.
But people deserve to know that their money is being well spent. That's the whole concept of public trust. We have a common interest in a set of values and a set of services that we're looking to government to provide. We are all legitimately entitled to a set of expectations that money is going to be well spent and services are going to be well delivered. So,
on that note, Suzanne, thank you so much for coming on All Politics is Local.
It's been my pleasure.
We are out of time.
Thank you.
If you can believe it, we've gone through an hour talking about the auditor's office, and it's been fascinating to me. I hope it's been fascinating to our viewers. All Politics is Local is a production of the Greater Blackstone Valley Democrats. For more information about the Greater Blackstone Valley Dems, feel free to visit our website at www.gbvdems.org. Thanks for tuning in. Good night, everybody.